I don't know how you would characterize the gang leaders who got 13-year-old kids hopped up on crack and sent them out onto the street to murder other African-American children. Maybe you thought they were good citizens. She didn't. She didn't. You are defending the people who kill the lives you say matter. Tell the truth.
During that exchange, former President Bill Clinton thought he was talking to Black Lives Matter activists, but he actually wasn't. The two protesters were local residents and organizers who oppose Hillary Clinton. The exchange took over the news cycle this week, prompting the following walkback on Friday.
I rather vigorously defended my wife, as I'm wont to do, and I realized finally I was talking past her the way she was talking past me. We got to stop that in this country. We got to listen to each other.
Now, the incident points to two challenges for the Clinton campaign: the policies and the politics. And joining me now to discuss both, Jason Johnson of TheRoot.com, Michael Denzel Smith, author of the upcoming book Invisible Man, got the whole world watching a young black man's education, and Herman Lopez of Vox. All right, I'm going to come to you first, Jason, on the second thing, the politics.
Right.
How much harm did Bill Clinton do, if any?
He did tremendous harm for Hillary Clinton. But he does this all the time. He can't stop talking and he can't stop fighting. The only benefit that the Clintons have whenever Bill Clinton goes off script, whether he did this in 2008, whether he does this now, is the fact that many African-American voters don't feel that they have a choice. Right. So no matter how ill and how ridiculous Bill Clinton gets, black folk are probably still going to vote for Hillary Clinton because Bernie Sanders hasn't gotten enough of them.
Well, except you know, Michael, for younger African Americans who do seem to be more open to Bernie Sanders. Right. Has the Clinton campaign at this point done enough damage with younger African Americans that they risk, at minimum, a turnout problem among young black people based on these criminal justice issues?
I think that's what Bill Clinton does not understand, is that it's not the 90s anymore, and that we are having a reckoning about his presidency and the effects that it had on the African American community. And I don't think he wants to have a discussion about this language of super predator with all of the baggage that he comes with. I mean, let's say that someone who has multiple allegations of sexual assault and sexual harassment were to be called a super predator, as Bill Clinton has in his background. I mean, what would he defend that? But, you know, just the policy that we're pointing to right now, the 94 crime bill, I mean, the explosion of the police state and the prison system, that's under his watch, and he cannot escape that. And my thing is, it's politically expedient for him last year to apologize for it and walk it back. Now it's not. It's what you documented in your book, your Fracture. You're talking about essentially how they want to have it both ways, Bill Clinton in particular, but the modern Democratic Party more broadly. They want to appeal to the racism of working class white voters, but also win black voters over. And so they use the language, of racism, while also trying to speak movement language, and it just does not work. Those two things are incongruent. They do not work together.
Michael Denzel Smith spilling the tea this morning on the TV. Let's go to Herman real quick, because let's now, I think Michael has taken us to where I want to go, which is the policy, right? So you have, Vox.com did a piece quantifying sort of when mass incarceration really kicked in. I want to put up a chart for people to take a look at. Now, this looks a little complicated, but you'll just notice that where that chart like leaps up, that's the 80s, right? And then the line that you can see going straight down is where the crime bill happens. So Herman, you guys at Vox made the point that while the crime bill was bad policy, we all agree now that most of it was bad policy. You guys make the point that you say it is not the cause of mass incarceration. Explain.
Right, and the reason for that is because the bill mostly focused on the federal prison system. It did have some incentives for the states to increase their prison sentences and whatnot, but for the most part it focused on the federal system. And relative to the entire U.S. prison system, the federal system just isn't that big. About 13% of prisoners are in the federal system. So all of the rest are on the state level. So if you want to address mass incarceration, that's really where the focus is on the state and local level, and most of the inmates are there.
And so yet at the same time, Jason, to Michael's point, yes, it's mostly states that are putting people in prison. It's mostly governors and legislatures that are writing the laws that are mass incarcerating people of color. And yet the sort of blame for the crime bill, we really haven't reckoned with how broad it really is, because it's also states. I want to put up a couple of little data points. In the House of Representatives, the Democratic vote only, forget the Republicans, for the crime bill, 188 Democrats in the House, 64 said no. In the Senate, 54 Democrats for it, to no. And then you get down to the state level where mayors, black mayors, were asking for the crime bill, and then we're implementing the crime bill and putting people in prison. Have we not had a broad enough reckoning with the damage that was done really by everyone?
Oh, exactly. But that never happens during election season, Joy.
Right.
Because it's about impression. I mean, look, only 12 members of the Congressional Black Caucus voted against the crime bill.
24 voted for it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you had black mayors, you had black leadership. I mean, the difficulty with what happened yesterday is really about the optics, because some of the things that Bill Clinton was saying were being echoed by black ministers and black pastors and black mayors in the 90s. So I think we all have to sort of look at the legacy of this bill. It's not as easy to just put it on the Clintons, but that doesn't really matter because it's a campaign season, and these are voters that he's got to get. And fighting with them all the time with this self-righteous attitude that Clinton has, it doesn't help.
It doesn't work. And by the way, you know, people should remember that not everybody was rolling over for this, because my colleague, Reverend Al Sharpton, was dead set against it. Civil rights leaders, dead set against it. They were fighting it really, really hard. You can see video of them there. I mean, they really fought it. So there was an element of society that looked ahead and saw that this was going to come. So do the Clintons now, so many years later, still have to answer for what was done so long ago?
Yes, everyone has to answer, but the problem is that the activists were on the ground at that time fighting against this and talking about the other ways to fight crime were not being listened to in that regard. So whenever there's a call for more, like there's a legitimate concern about the ways in which violence enacts itself in black communities. And so when we go to our elected officials and we say, can we get these resources? The only thing that those elected officials hear is police and prisons, right? So they don't hear the social programs. They don't invest in communities. What we get is this police state. And that's the problem here. And everyone has to be accountable for what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And Herman, even if the statistics say, okay, mass incarceration is mostly state issues, not federal, putting that aside, don't we also have to reckon with the fact that there was a double motive? That in addition to answering the call from black mayors and police, you did also have the political motive of trying to corral more white working class voters in the 90s.
Yeah, it's definitely true. It's definitely something that the Clintons actively played into during their campaign. And the bill was geared to be tough on crime. There's no doubt about it. Hillary Clinton herself said that she wanted tougher prison sentences on the federal level. So they still have to answer for that politically. But in terms of whether the bill actually had that much of an impact or whether it was more a symptom of a broader trend at the time, that's really the debate now. And it seems to be that the bill, for the most part, was more a symptom of this tough on crime trend at the time.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you the last word on this, because you got the book coming out, and I'm really excited about reading it. What would you want to hear as somebody who is not only the target of a lot of these kind of products, young black man, sorry about that, but also who is an activist and who is a voice that is saying, you know what, this is what we want. What should these campaigns actually be saying? Well,
they should actually be, one, just reckoning with the history of these tough on crime legislation. Like, let's actually trace that. Let's hold everyone accountable, and let's everyone have their come to Jesus moment and apologize for doing it, and then say, okay, we need to then reverse this. And how do we reverse it? We sit down with people that are actually in these communities doing the work right now without federal and state and government assistance, and then say, how do we support you?
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Denzel Smith, I support you, man. I can't wait to read your book. Jason Johnson's going to come back later in the program. And thank you also to Herman Lopez from Vox.com. All right, up next.